So first of all, thank you everyone for coming today. I know you're taking time out of work, school, families, so thank you for doing so, and thank you, Dave, for making this opportunity available for us. As I said, I'm Megan Ballard from Gonzaga University School of Law. Before I actually get started, I want you to interrupt me. If you don't understand what I'm saying, if I'm talking too fast, if you have questions, just raise your hand. So it sounded like a lot of you are interested in JDs, but I didn't hear the word LLM so much. If you're interested in an LLM, can you indicate? So a few of you are interested primarily in LLMs. All right, maybe some of you aren't decided yet. Okay, so I have both an LLM and a JD. There are some differences that you probably already know about, but there are likely differences that are less apparent. So let's start with the ones that you might already know about. As a preliminary matter, whether you apply for a JD degree or an LLM degree depends on your educational level already. So if you have a law degree from Korea or somewhere else, you can apply for either graduate program, a JD or an LLM. If you have no prior education in law, then you're only looking at JD degrees. The purpose of these degrees are very different. Now, you probably know this part, but in the United States and in Korea, both degrees are graduate degrees. So let's start on the left-hand column with the JD degree. So the JD degree is the most basic law degree in the United States. All U.S. lawyers have a JD. All but 5 states require a JD degree to sit for the licensing bar exam. It's not, so let's jump over to the LLM part of this now. LLM is also a graduate degree. It's an advanced graduate degree after the JD. Most U.S. attorneys do not have an LLM degree. It's not required to be a judge, to be a prosecutor, to practice law. And there are no statistics on how many United States lawyers have LLM degrees, but I've read about 5% have an LLM degree. So that means most of the students in LLM programs are international students. So international students who get an LLM can sit for the bar exam in the United States in 5 states. That's Washington, Wisconsin, New York, Georgia is new to that group, and California. So here's where we get into differences that are not quite as apparent between the 2 degrees. So this is the way in which these different programs are overseen by regulatory bodies. Let's start again with a JD on the left. The American Bar Association, or the ABA, regulates JD programs. It regulates them by authorizing them and continually reviewing them based on U.S. government. To maintain approval, a JD program has to comply with a bunch of ABA rules. Some of these rules relate to our curriculum, so we are required to comply with rules that establish a rigorous standard of legal education. And also, JD programs are required to make a lot of information available to the public. So, for example, we need to make employment information available to the public. How many JD graduates get jobs and how many don't? You should be able to go onto a JD website and find that information. Bar passage rates also have to be publicized and transparent because of the ABA regulation. So again, you should be able to go onto a website and find out what percentage of graduates of a JD program pass the bar exam. tuition and fees need to be transparent, as do class sizes. The ABA also requires JD programs to establish a method of receiving student complaints. And the ABA has approved about 203 JD programs. Okay, let's jump to the LL.M side. There are about 400 LL.M programs. These programs are run by schools that also run the ABA regulated JD programs. However, the LL.M programs themselves are not subject to regulation. So there is no ABA oversight of the LL.M program. That's what causes the majority of differences between a JD and an LL.M program. So the ABA itself emphasizes the difference in the degrees by stating that there is no post-JD or other degree program. It's a substitute for the JD. They're just different degrees. So with an LL.M program, the ABA does not require learning objectives, nor does the ABA require LL.M programs to publish information on employment rates or about passengers. Now, that's not to say you cannot find that information. It's a double negative. Let me say that again. You can go onto an LL.M website and look for that information, and it might be there. Schools are not required to tell you that information. So, ask if you're interested. Okay, the other difference is the length of time required to earn each degree. Now, some of this goes back to the part of the JD being regulated. The JD takes longer because the American Bar Association has these requirements about what students have to learn. So, if you have a law degree from Korea or somewhere else outside the United States, you can do a JD degree faster. The American Bar Association allows us to transfer some of the credits from your Korean law degree into an American JD. So, you can earn a JD typically in what we call 2 academic years. This would be about 21 months. You don't have to, I should say. If you want to take the full JD curriculum, you can do that. So, with the shortened JD for international lawyers, typically that's 2 academic years. Gonzaga has an even shorter program. You can earn a JD from Gonzaga in less than 16 months because we offer a full course load during the summer. Okay, if you don't have a prior degree in law, then a JD is typically going to take 3 academic years. That's about 33 months. You take your summers off. There are about 14 schools now that offer a JD program in 24 months. You start school, you keep on studying for 24 months with no summers off. I feel like I'm going very fast. I feel like I should stop and ask if you have questions. I'm throwing a lot of data at you. I'll give you another opportunity at the end. Yeah.
Which of those schools offer those types of programs?
Which schools offer which ones?
The ones that are run year-round that give you that accelerated program. So
there are about 14 schools now that run the 24-month programs. So you should be able to look at LSAC, Law School Admissions Council has a directory with previous programs. I can tell you how I use it here, some related program. Who of the administrators offers a 2-year accelerated? For 40 years. Yeah, you were the first grade trainer. Gonzaga has one. Yeah. All right, so that's how long it takes to earn a JD degree. Again, for an international lawyer, it can be shortened. Either less than 16 months at Gonzaga, or maybe 21 months at other schools.
But in terms of tuition, it's about the same, right? Whether you take the full accelerate 2-year program or
Well, actually, it depends. If the school charges per credit, and the JD is 60 credits, then yes, it's the same. Some schools charge by year or semester.
But you're still doing 6 semesters of coursework, right? Without the breaks. If you use a yeah.
Right. Exactly. So the downside to that, of course, is that if you want a 3-month practice experience, you might not be able to get that. At Gonzaga, you can, because we're very flexible. You can go through it in less than 16 months, or you can take a semester break and have a practical experience also.
Yeah, with us, we used to be year-round for 2 years. I mean, a few years ago, we did the summer still, students have to earn unit credit, but they can do it with extra. So you're getting the practice and hands-on experience.
And I think a lot of schools do that. At Gonzaga, our 16-month JD, you can take up to 6 credits of a practical legal experience and get credit for that too. So you can go through straight 16 months and get your practical experience, but not the full 3-month full-time experience unless you take a break.
And that's where doing your research is helpful because, like, for example, our summer program are in the evenings and weekends, so you go on your days.
Okay, so an LLM is going to be speedier in most instances, but comparing the length of time is a little bit difficult, going back to the lack of regulation of LLM programs. The ABA doesn't tell schools what they have to include for an LLM. So LLM programs used to be 12 months, now most of them are 9 months. And some schools offer part-time options. So there is no set number of courses, according to the American Bar Association, so the program would vary. All right, curricular differences, or differences in the courses that students take. Here again, curricular differences are due in part because of the oversight of the American Bar Association of JD. So let's start with the JD part. Most schools for JD programs have a similar set of courses that students are required to take. So there's this core set of courses that all American lawyers take that's part of a JD for international students as well. Typically, about 1/3 of the JD curriculum is made up of these required courses. And they're fairly standard among law schools. So that typical required courses, often, most of these are required in your first year, are going to be courses like contracts, property, torts, civil procedure, criminal procedure, professional responsibility, criminal law, course in research and writing, for example, and professional responsibility. The American Bar Association does not authorize JDs to be completely online. So because these required courses are similar in all JD programs, these are the courses that form the basis of understanding of U.S. law. These are the courses that are tested heavily. This is a legal culture issue as well. If you're interested in becoming fully immersed in the legal culture in the United States, these courses are the ones that will help you do that. Okay, so on the other side, the LL.M program, again, because the American Bar Association doesn't dictate the curriculum, these come in so many different shapes and varieties, it's hard to characterize. So there is no standard set of courses. I've heard some people say they're interested in specialization. The LL.M might be perfect because you can focus on a particular area of law and not take the standard set of required courses. So some of those areas of law are, for example, tax, intellectual property, international law, health law. There are a number of programs, about 100 of them, that are geared specifically to provide an overview of American law for international lawyers. And there are some LL.M programs that are entirely online. So there's another, I can't really characterize the difference in bar passage rates related to the different curricula, but let me talk about bar passage for just a moment. There are statistics from the 2014 bar examination throughout all states that indicate less than 30% of international students pass the U.S. bar exams. Now, because most international students earn an LL.M degree, not a JD degree, it might be because some of those students don't have standard set courses. Of course, it could very easily be because of the language barrier. It's a difficult test, even for speakers of English as first language. And that, I said last year, is less than 30% for international students. That compares to about 64% across the board of all takers, U.S. lawyers and international students. Okay, admissions differences. This is where we have most similarities. So a little bit of difference, again, because of ABA regulations. A JD program cannot admit a student unless we can have a reasonable basis for believing that student is capable of successfully completing the JD program and capable of being admitted to the bar, passing the bar exam. So, of course, you need, in order to be admitted to a JD program, you need an undergraduate bachelor's degree. International students with a law degree from a different country may not have to take an LSAT to be admitted to a JD degree. This is where you need to check with each program. At Gonzaga, we don't require an LSAT for admission. If you have an international JD, you got to do an LSAT, sorry. Okay. International students typically will have to show English language proficiency through a TOEFL or an IELTS. Most schools probably will not recognize the choice, but you can ask. Now this is where I'm going to let Sarah pick up on this. For a JD degree, you'll likely have to enroll in LSAC's LL.M Credential Assembly Service. Now that's true even if you are applying for a JD degree. That's confusing. You have to sign up for the LL.M Credential Assembly Service because that's where LSAC will take your transcript and your letters of recommendation and help American law schools understand what so even for a JD, you may have to do LL.M. Okay, jump over to the LL.M side. No ABA admissions requirements. It's totally up to each school. You do need to take it in order to be admitted. You need a U.S. JD degree or some kind of law degree from a different country. No LSAT requirement for LL.M. There will be a language proficiency requirement, and similar to the JD, students will likely have to upload their materials through the Credential Assembly Service. Okay, here's where I can't give you much guidance whatsoever. How do you know which program is going to be best for you? So I would suggest that depends completely on your learning goals and your career goals. I heard some of you want to focus on a particular area of law. If you an LL.M might be perfect. If you want to pass a bar exam in the United States, it might be that a JD would be better because you will have all of those required courses that all U.S. lawyers take. Now, some LL.M students can take the bar exam in 5 states and take a bar prep class after the LL.M that will help them prepare for the bar. If your goal is to solidify your legal English skills, you could probably do that through a shorter LL.M degree. But for either degree, you want to ask questions about what kind of language support they might have for English language learners, if there are particular courses that help with legal English. And of course, you want to look at the length of time. If the longer your program, the more solid your legal English skills will be. Maybe your goal is to develop an international network, because LL.M programs typically have mostly international students. You can establish a fabulous network of international students. I know many international students who go through LL.M programs who didn't establish networks with American networks. So if you're looking to establish networks with American lawyers, you might be looking at a JD program that has a smaller number of international students. And maybe you're looking to become thoroughly acculturated into the practice of law in the United States. For that, a Juris Doctor might be a better choice, because that's what U.S. lawyers think and know. I was at an American Bar Association conference in Argentina in October. And I had an Argentinian lawyer ask me, why would he ever want to know about tort law in the United States? That's a required class for American JD. It's a body of law that talks about how you can recover money, pay to recover money for an injury. Now, it might not be apparent that any international lawyer would ever care, but that was part of our legal culture. It also gives us the theory related to the duty in law. Tort law establishes that notion of a duty. That's integral to contract law. You need to know that idea of duty to understand U.S. contracts. We also need to understand that notion of a duty to be able to understand corporate law in the United States. So, if you're interested in that complete acculturation, maybe a JD or better coach. That's what I learned. But I really have been throwing a lot of information and I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, I heard that a couple of the University of Iowa and State University of New York and others don't require LSAT, right?
For a JD, if you have an international law degree, or if you have a law degree already, can you get this? Okay, so the American Bar Association that regulates JDs, they're becoming a little more flexible on the LSAT requirement across the board. So as long as the school can have a reasonable basis for thinking that you can succeed in the JD program and pass the bar exam, schools are not required to require an LSAT, but it's up to each school.
But also keep in mind that for many JD programs, they pay scholarships on LSAT scores, GPA. So by not taking it, you may be losing out on some of that scholarship. So if you're looking at getting money, check the school year line for see what they're basing their scholarships on. It may be worth it to take it, do well, and get scholarships. Because schools are giving parts of the prize. So you don't want to lose out on that because of the convenience of it.
On the other hand, though, there's some indication that the LSAT has cultural bias in it. So that's why sometimes it doesn't require it. You don't need the validating for success. So if you take it and you don't do that well, a school could still, even if you don't submit your LSAT, school can request that. And that might all kids to, so it's a little bit of a gamble. Okay, so let me clarify terminology here. By internship, do you mean a position that is paid for which a student does not get credit?
I'm not sure. I just heard they just after 1L, when the law school students need to get more experience in the law firm, and it could be influence on law school students future law firm.
Okay, so I think what you're talking about is programs that have summers without taking courses. Students traditionally have looked for a job, even a volunteer position during the summer to get that experience. Depending on the market, the city in which the law school is, it can be difficult to get a position. That's very true. And I can't tell you whether it's any more difficult for an international student. I think that very much depends on the qualifications of the student in the market in which the city, the geographical area in which the student is looking for a position. There are some visa issues, F1 visa issues, so I think to take a job during your summer, that's considered a pre-completion or PT. PT.
Practical training.
Thank you. Actual practical training. Jet lag. So if you take 2 months for optional practical training, then I think that's subtracted from the amount of time you have after. Right. And that's why I suggested it depends on the qualification of the student. And so in the law school world, we did that kind of work for school credit and we put that externship. And in my field, it's a pickup conferences in a consortium with their law licensure program by Pepperdine, Florida, UCLA, USC, other schools. We all have extension programs for international students too. And so this is for school credit. And I think that's one of the reasons why law schools have increased their externship offerings. It's because it provides a much more secure way for all students to get practical experience. You get placed out in the real world for law school credit. It has this, I'm just giving every other school has this opportunity for international.
It's also about the work you put into it. So if you wait until the spring semester to go, oh, what am I doing this summer? That's going to be difficult. If you start and you go to lunch, most universities will have lunchtime sessions where we'll focus on certain elements or working within the field. And if you're working on, going to these things throughout the year, making networking, making some contacts, then you should be able to have a good foundation to set something up for the summer. Don't wait for that.
we'll all be downstairs and happy to talk to any of you after our presentation. Thank you.
Staring out the window, I can see the wind blow. Watching